Well, hey there, Pantherland. Happy week 2. Happy Labor Day. I hope that everyone enjoyed a little bit of an extra bit of the weekend. I am Daniel Miller. I am your curriculum facilitator, and I am here with another episode of Coaching on Demand. And this week, everyone, I wanted to talk about something that really gets a lot of teachers kind of perturbed, stuck, thinking, right? A little bit, maybe questioning what to do. And it's the idea of engagement, right? I think over all of my years as an instructional coach and as my years as a teacher in the classroom, I always thought to myself, and teachers have always been asking me, how can I design lessons? How can I design assessments that are more engaging? Right? Because I really want my students, we all want our students to be engaged because we know, and research proves, that more engaged students are more likely to remember what they learn and are more likely to perform better on assessments than their peers who are not engaged, right? So, how do we do this? Well, we want to remember that engagement is not really a binary concept, even though we like to maybe think of things as binary, as sort of yes, no. They're not. Things are more complicated than that, right? And so we want to think of engagement on a spectrum. And there is some research from the Schlechty Center, and I have a blog post down below in the resources that talks about the spectrum and the levels of engagement. And we can really think about engagement in 5 zones. The fifth zone, the highest zone, being that engaged student, that self-motivated, self-directed student, and that first zone being the student who's not engaged, maybe the student who's a little bit combative when it comes to getting engaged or doing work in the classroom. And so when we think about a class and we view it through those 5 lenses, it becomes a little bit easier to diagnose and zoom in on maybe some strategies or some methods or techniques that might move some of those groups one level in a more engaged way, right? We got to recognize that it's going to be pretty hard to get every single kid at the top level of engagement for the entire 90 minutes. It's probably not going to happen, right? We got to be realistic. And we got to recognize that kids are going to ebb and flow. They're going to go up and down as they are hungry or not, as they're happy or not. I mean, again, as the day goes on, we tend to get a little bit more tired or less engaged ourselves, right? So one way that we can manage this, everyone, is to solicit student feedback when we are trying new things or when we're trying to ask them about the ways that they like to learn or what's engaging for them, right? Soliciting student feedback and then showing them the way that you're putting that feedback into future lessons, into future assessments, really helps to reinforce the idea that the students, more than anything else, are at the center of your planning because it's about them learning the content, them learning the curriculum, them being able to do the things, right? We can already do it. It's about them learning it, right? Another barrier to engagement is the idea of the one size fits all method, right? When we have a one size fits all t-shirt, we're all going to be clothed, but not all of us are going to necessarily be comfortable, and some of us aren't going to look very good in that big old t-shirt, right? So we want to recognize that if there's only one way to do something, then it's really easy to disengage if that one way doesn't really sit with my way of learning. If I go into, let's say, an English class, because as a former English teacher, I kind of know that content, but if I go into an English class and the teacher only says that I can write an essay to demonstrate my ability, well, if I struggle with writing or if I don't feel myself as the best writer, that might create some barriers to me being able to really engage with that assessment. And so if we take a step back from that, we think about the goal of the assessment, right? Maybe the goal is to demonstrate argumentation, right? Having evidence, having commentary, having a line of reasoning. Well, a student could do that in a variety of ways. They could do an essay, they could do a speech, they could do maybe, for example, a slide deck, right? There's a lot of different ways that they could do that work and still demonstrate that skill or demonstrate that standard. So collaborating with AI, collaborating with your colleagues or PLC or department, collaborating with me as a thought partner or planning partner in this to really kind of curate options and present those options can be a great way of kind of mitigating that disengagement, you know? Because again, like that's going to really kind of show the students that you're stepping out of your comfort zone a little bit so we can meet their needs. Because there's going to be a time when we probably all have to take that standardized test or all have to do that thing that we have to do. But if we develop those skills in a variety of ways, it's a lot easier to do that thing in the one way when we have to do it in that way. All right. The other great thing about doing the multiple options is that's a great way to break up a big class, right? If we've got a huge class of maybe 34 or 35 kids, me lecturing to that many students probably isn't going to be the best way to deliver that instruction. But maybe having some options set up, maybe a video for one group, maybe an article and slides for another group, and maybe a teacher station with me where I'm kind of doing a mini lesson. That could be a way to mitigate that and kind of deliver that lesson more intensely and more explicitly to that group that really needs the most support. Lastly, everybody at the bottom, keep investing in routines and procedures. Keep showing students and reminding students and rewarding students what they need to do and how they need to do it in the room with you. That is so important. If you're trying something new, like maybe a more engaging lesson type or a more engaging assessment type, consider that you might have to teach the students how to do that before they actually do it. You might want to consider maybe using a video or maybe having some photos or demonstrations or models of what you want them to do or how you want them to do it to kind of help them go through that process. We all are learning lots of things. We're learning not just content, but we're learning means, and we want to make sure that we're reinforcing those routines and procedures, all the time, because that's going to be what's going to make the learning a lot more efficient and a lot easier to get to. Down below the video, everybody, I've got my resources. So the first one is a little Google form. Right below the video, there's a sneaky little Google form link. If you click that link and fill out the form, everybody, that's just a little quick needs assessment, something for me to get to know each of you a little bit more and understand how I can serve you at the beginning of the year as your CF. I've also down below that, everyone, have a video about universal design for learning and kind of what it is in a big overview. That can be really helpful as you're thinking about those options and choices that we're maybe curating for students to get them more engaged. I've got a handbook on developing classroom procedures and kind of thinking through what might need a procedure that you didn't even think maybe needed a procedure. And then lastly, I've got a blog post about the levels of engagement that breaks down the 5 levels really concretely with some good student behaviors and look-fors. So I'd recommend checking that out if you're thinking about where are my students when it comes to engagement in this classroom. Again, everyone, trying to present a lot of options and ideas and resources for you here at the beginning of the year. If you see me in the hallways, reach out. I'll be coming around a lot as we get started this week, and I'll see you around. Don't forget that we do have a faculty development on the 3rd during planning period, so you will be coming up to 236D, the Teaching and Learning Center, during your planning period after duty to participate in some PD around NESAs and goal setting. So please mark your calendar for that on the 3rd during planning. We'll try to have you in and out as quickly as we can to respect your time. Thank you so much, everyone, and I hope you have a great second week here in Pantherland.